an earthworm in a very, very long time. But remember, they are such essential parts of our soil system in terms of keeping the soil aerated, feeding the birds. So that we do get them. If I find any, I'll let you know. We also get all sorts of things coming out. Dung beetles that have the larvae have hatched in the balls underneath the surface of the soil. Various borer beetle grubs or larvae. Oh yes, we do. WildEarthTV Dam is not looking nearly as full as I thought it was going to look. I'm quite disappointed by that. Maybe it looks... okay, it's better than I expected. Luckily we've got the roof flapping to keep us entertained, like it's trying to take off. Hello, mister. Sorry, boy. I know, there's this giant flapping thing bearing down upon you. Don't worry, it's just us in a vehicle, believe it or not. Talking to the wildebeest, which I realize you might not have been able to see. You see him? Oh, good. I'm sorry, I can't see my monitor, so I don't know what you've seen. Okay, not too bad. There's some water at least. Luckily, we've got this magnificent unimpeded view. Alright, apparently Tristan's lions are on their way. Let's join him once again.
Indeed, so we've managed to catch up with the Nkuhumas, and they are busy bounding down the road. The cubs seem to have lots of energy. They're running around, and in this lovely weather, it is a perfect place for them, or perfect conditions for them to bound around. Now it only looks like 2 females that I can see, and all 6 cubs. Alright, so there are 6 cubs here, but only 2 females. I don't know where the 3rd female is, but I'm sure she's around. Maybe she's up ahead. We've just kind of come onto the back of them, and they're, interestingly enough, doing a big loop. So they've turned back on themselves somewhat. They've just come past Buffelshoek Dam, which I can tell you is looking quite full. It's probably 3 times more water there than there was 2 days ago, so all is looking good. And still don't see the 3rd lioness. It's just the 2 of them. But isn't that spectacular to see them? Now, they're all looking quite healthy. The cubs are looking good. They don't look too bad at all. They seem like they've got nice big round tummies, and very little sign of that mange that they had for a while. It looks like that's cleared up for the most part, and rain like this will be quite good for that. So actually, we were talking about earlier parasites. That is the one parasite that actually does suffer in the rain. Mange does not proliferate well in wet conditions. So my apologies, I forgot about mange. I wasn't even thinking about it. It was such a prevalent thing during the winter, but now that we've come into the summer months, it's a lot less of a problem. So they're all looking quite healthy. Moms look healthy as well. So it's really great to see them, and I can't believe how big they've gotten. The last time I saw these guys, the little ones were just little balls of fluff. They weren't really big at all, and now they've gotten some size. About halfway up their mums now. Large. But they are on a serious striding mission. Seems like they are making their way straight back towards Torchwood, which is not ideal for us. I was hoping they were going to stick around at Buffelshoek Dam and spend some time there, but it seems that they are still going to carry on eastwards. Oh, we're cutting off now. So what I might do is I might just see, maybe they've spotted something here, because everybody's just stopped all of a sudden. It seems like they're looking into the bush here. Ah, there's another female there. Great. Well spotted, Liam. So there's the 3rd female. So let's see if, now that they've gone off the road, I'm going to just try and see if I can get around them a little bit and see if maybe we can get ahead of them. Toilet time, little one. I'm sorry. You can see the little cubs have got quite full bellies, so they've obviously had a good meal somewhere here. They're all busy playing on a log, so I'm going to just try and find a way in. So with our Flintstone mobile, things are slightly more complicated when it comes to off-roading. We've got to be a bit more careful about where we position ourselves. So just careful, there, Vivian. They've got a carcass. Excellent. So it looks like they've made a kill. Isn't that amazing? So this is really good news. I'm just going to try and position ourselves that we can actually see. It looks like they've killed a waterbuck from what I can see. I'm just trying to get it with the flaps that we have here. We only really have one way that we can view them, but this looks like a waterbuck, a young male waterbuck by the looks of it. And I wonder if the one female didn't kill it and that's why the others are coming this way. You can see she's got blood all over her face there, so this is a fairly fresh kill, and now the cubs are coming in to have a feed. This morning they weren't here, they came from quite a way away, so I don't think they went to go drink at Buffelshoek Dam. In all likelihood the females killed and then they went back to fetch the cubs, and now they're bringing them back to this carcass. Isn't that amazing? And it's just in time that we've gotten here because the rain is now starting to pelt down. But I'm so glad that we got here and that they've got a carcass. That's amazing. So that should mean that they will be around for a little bit. I would imagine after this they're going to be very saturated, so they're going to be full and they're not going to move too much. And with the rain there's going to be water all over, so they're not going to have to move too far for water either. So they've killed this in the perfect place. Now these kind of conditions are absolutely perfect for lions to hunt in, so it would have been good for lions, leopards, all hunting last night. So I would imagine this waterbuck was killed in that downpour that we got in the early hours of this morning. So around 1 or 2 o'clock we got a massive downpour that came down, and I would imagine that that's when they hunted. When it rains like this, you can hear it on our canvas of the roof that we have, is that it is quite noisy, and so out here it just deadens all the sounds of a predator moving, and so they can move much easier. Also, you'll have a situation where the scent of these lions is softened heavily by the rain, so everything falls into the lion's favor when it rains like this. And it's quite common to find them on carcasses in this kind of weather. They do a lot of hunting when it's like this. Now I'm hoping that these little ones are going to start fighting with one another. They often do for the best pieces of meat, and sometimes you hear the squabbling that goes on. At the moment there's probably enough of the carcass that everybody's got a chance to be able to feed easily and get their little piece, but as there gets less and less, so the competition starts, and then you'll find them swatting at one another and growling and hissing, and it gets quite noisy around the dinner table. So you can hear some of them are just starting to grumble with one another. But this is a very fresh carcass. There's still all the insides are in the cavity of that waterbuck. They haven't dragged those out properly yet. So, like I say, I'm sure this was only killed this morning, and they've just opened it up and started feeding. And the other two females went to fetch all the hooligans and brought them back. And that's why the one female is quite full at this stage. So Amber, the cubs now, there's two different litters. I'm not 100% sure when they were born. When the Nkuhumas were born, they were born here on Djuma, but at that stage I was working somewhere else, so I'm not 100% sure the exact dates they were born. But as far as I know, they were born in, I think it was April or May, somewhere there. I think so, somewhere around there. So that would make them, the older ones, they should be about 8 months now, and then the younger ones are about 6 months as far as I remember, but maybe we can check that with Brent or Jamie. They should know a little bit better. And in terms of when they will be considered adults, is normally only when they're able to breed. So adults only breed at around 3.5 to 4 years old in a female, and the males will only start breeding at around 5, 6 if they're lucky, normally more like 7. So that's generally when they are considered full-grown adults. By 3.5, 4 years old, they're actually contributing to hunting, and they are an integral part of the pride. So now these are still cubs, and then they'll go through sub-adult phase, which is from about a year to the 3.5 year, and then they become the adults. But now you see how the moms are alert. So they'll feed, and then every now and then they'll pop their head up. The reason why they're doing that is because they know the noise that they're making feeding can often lure in things like hyenas or other lions. And so you'll find one will always be up just checking, making sure that there's no sign of those hyenas approaching, particularly with the cubs around the carcass. These cubs are still a little bit small to defend themselves. A hyena would still be able to kill one of them. So that's why they just check every now and then. You can see the cubs have not a care in the world. They just head down, eating. They know moms will do all the hard work in keeping them safe. So there you can see all those internal organs. Now I know it's a bit squeamish, but those are vitally important to these lions. There's lots and lots of nutrients inside there, and so it's one of the first places the lions go to feed. They will eat all of those nutritious organs like the kidneys and the liver and those things. So for those of you that are a little bit squeamish, maybe it's now time to look away for a little bit. You can see also the stomach content just in front of her face there. So what they do is they pull the stomach out first, because that content and that acid tends to spoil the meat quite quickly. So they pull that out, and then they'll feed off all those other organs. And like I say, normally what goes first is the liver, the kidney, the heart. Those are the very nutritious ones, and then after that they go for the lungs and the intestines. And they won't eat the grass. You'll often find that they'll take the intestine and they shake it to get rid of all the grass and all the particles that are inside, and then they just eat the lining that's left. But you can hear the crunching as the teeth saw through this hide as well. So the little ones at the back particularly are going through some skin to try and expose the rump area, and so you can hear the crunching of the skin as they go. Now a waterbuck doesn't have very thick skin like something like a buffalo would have, and so it's not nearly as bad. When they eat buffalo, you can hear it quite clearly as they try to saw through the skin. Remember, they've got those triangular teeth on the side of their mouths that act like little knives, and they basically rub up against each other, and they can then take off big chunks of flesh, and often they'll use that then to saw through tough skin. On a hippo as well, you hear it quite a lot when they try and eat hippos. There's that sawing, crunching sound that comes as they try to get through the skin. So you can hear now that little cub has moved across, and those two are now fighting for a position. And you'll find the adult will also be growling a little bit, because that's where all the tasty innards are. So Becky, thank you for that. You gave us the answer to the ages. There were 3 litters born around April, May, and then 2 that were born in June. And the 2 that were born in June, unfortunately, they passed away through a disease called white muscle disease, and they unfortunately didn't make it, but all the older ones have survived. And in all likelihood, the reason why they succumbed is because they were slightly smaller and their immune system was not as strong as what the older ones were, and that's why they weren't able to overcome that disease. Now, that disease was brought about because at that time, around sort of August, September, October, we had this drought that was gripping us, and so those of you that weren't watching at that stage, a lot of buffalo were dying, and so the lions were eating a lot of buffalo. They weren't eating anything else, and most of the buffalo at that stage were very, very skinny and hardly any nutrients on them. So even though the lions were fat and full every day and they were making multiple kills, they weren't actually getting the nutrients that they needed, particularly vitamin E, which is soluble in fat, I believe. So because the buffaloes didn't have too much fat, they weren't processing vitamin E properly, which led to this disease called white muscle disease, which is a horrible disease. It basically paralyzes the cubs and they can't move, and then they succumb to it. So The females were also starting to show symptoms, as well as the older cubs, but they then managed to start getting a bit of rain coming through, and so the animals started to pick up condition quite quickly, and now they're all absolutely fine. But listen to that. Isn't that incredible? So you can see it was even the female, she was getting quite upset with the young ones. So when it comes to carcass time, everybody has their area and they don't appreciate anybody coming in and taking their little section. And so that's why there's so much growling and carrying on, is that they're trying to push each other away and keep themselves positioned on the carcass that they get the most amount of meat. But that sound is amazing. It kind of shivers you through the bone and kind of cuts into you. So when you hear it, you can imagine being out here on a wet night like this without a vehicle, walking around and hearing that in the distance would be quite scary, wouldn't it? Alright, so we're going to stick with these Nkuhumas for a little bit. I'm going to try and see if I can position us a little bit better, that we don't have this big tree in the way. And then I'm going to, while we do that, we're going to go across to Brent, who's still busy in the tent. I wonder what he's gotten up to there.
Well, fortunately, the lion cub on my water bottle is not the only lion cubs you're seeing today. Isn't that wonderful? Nkuhumas are back on the visit. Oh, back on the visit. That was horrible English. They are back visiting. Yay. Now, we've got something very interesting, never before seen in the tent under the microscope. Oh, so exciting. Look at that. Isn't that absolutely stunning? I'm going to try and move it around a bit. Now, it is a crystal that Brian had in his bag called black tourmaline. Now, what's quite interesting about it, let me just change the focus point onto the smooth side there. Now, Brian was given this many moons ago, and there's a lot of different beliefs about it. I'm not quite sure that I believe in all of them, but we'll discuss them nonetheless. So I'll show you what it looks like out of the microscope shortly. And it is very pretty. So there we go. So it is a type of quartz crystal. Now, it's often called the electric rock or the electric crystal. So it continuously has, let me just turn it around for you there, Brian, there we go. It has an electric charge, a very, very faint electric charge. Brian and I have decided that we're going to actually get an electric tester out to test this theory. So it's used culturally all over the world for different things. Now, traditionally in Africa, it is used by sangomas, which are traditional healers, but more to do with the spiritual. And they roll the bones. So they often probably have a piece of this crystal surrounded by bones and other different things, and you roll it to predict the future. And you got to sing, Brian. I predict their lions on a waterbuck kill. Okay, so it was also used apparently in smelling out witches. So I'm not sure how. And you put it on someone's head to smell out the witch. But so it was also used to smell out witches. And also in European culture, in the pagan cultures, it was used for protection and also, strange enough, for also smelling out evil spirits. Brian, the guy who gave it to you said you must keep it near you, and it takes all the bad energy. And then you have to release the bad energy out of the stone, you have to go dance in the moonlight.
Something like that.
Yeah, so
I haven't done it in a while, so it's probably full of bad energy.
To get away from me, you evil stone. No, of course, we're only joking. So, but it is very beautiful, and it is amazing, the different types of minerals. I'm guessing that this particular piece, it was a South African who gave it to you, yes, either comes from Mozambique or Namibia, which are the two closest places that a black tourmaline is found. And it is fascinating. Now, of course, as interesting as black tourmaline is, I think you might enjoy the Nkuhuma pride a bit more. So back to Tristan.
Well, I certainly can say that I enjoy the Nkuhumas more than Brent. No, I'm just joking. It's always good to spend time with Brent. He's highly entertaining and quite a character, so it's always good. But we tried to reposition a little bit, but as you can see, the rain is coming down in sheets now. And so if we turn in any way other than what we are now, the rain just blows in to the vehicle and makes it almost impossible to carry on filming. So rather than heading home, we've positioned ourselves a little bit differently, and we now have protection from the back end with the roof, and so we can sit here quite happily and we are nice and dry. So rather than go home, I think this is a good compromise. I know we've got a bush in the way, but at least it's better than having no lines at all. So you can see how drenched the cubs are. They are absolutely soaked. It's bucketing down now, and one of the females, I think, decided enough is enough. She went under a thicket, but the little cubs have decided they're too hungry to go anywhere, so they're staying. You can see, look how miserable they look. They kind of popped up their head, and look at that face. That face is very unimpressed with life. That's a lion that is wondering, why is it raining on my parade? That's amazing. The way he just popped up his head, or she, I can't see from here which one it is, but the way they popped up their head and just kind of looked around as if to say, really, is it going to rain on me while I'm having my breakfast? The other cubs are not too perturbed. They just tucking in as though nothing's going on. Now the nice thing about this rain is it means that their meat is going to stay nice and fresh. You're going to find that they're going to be able to eat this and it's not going to go off at all. It's almost like being in a fridge. So it's going to be very, very pleasant for them. But you can see that cub is now just opening up that leg. It's trying to get to all those choice little cuts of rump that are inside there. And so it's just coming through the carcass now. And so I'm sure some of you might have heard this myth that waterbuck, because they smell very bad, do not get eaten. And there you can see right that is a complete fallacy. Waterbuck are eaten by everything. I've seen every single predator out here feed off a waterbuck. So just because us as humans, we don't really like the taste of waterbuck, and the oil that secretes out of the sebaceous glands does taint the meat somewhat, means that we don't feed off it very much. But the predators love it. They eat it all the time. I've seen them actively hunting waterbuck over other animals as well. So it's a really big, bulky antelope and is perfect for a pride of lions. If there's not too many buffalo around, then things like waterbuck and kudu are going to sustain this pride really well. But you can see they one by one are retreating off the carcass. They're making their way into a little thicket and trying to get out of this sheets and rain and wind that is coming down. Safari Dean, I completely agree. Lion cubs in the rain is thoroughly amusing. The sadness on their face and that look of bewilderment as to why it's raining on them is quite entertaining. The only thing that I think looks more depressed with life in rain like this is generally male lions, big male lions. Their mane flaps over their head and it kind of gets pasted to their forehead, and they just look thoroughly unimpressed with this. So the only thing better in rain is big male lions, but these cubs are quite entertaining. You can see how much water is being thrown about when they shake their bodies. So phantom fox, flies and vultures, will they hang around in this rain and pester these lions? In all likelihood, no. It's raining far too hard for the vultures to even fly in this, so they are not going to be anywhere near here until this all calms down. Once it dries out a little bit, then yes, the vultures will come in. But for now, there's going to be no vultures. I mean, you can see how hard it's coming down. I'm sure you can hear it. It is raining the proverbial cats and dogs, and so vultures really wouldn't be able to fly in this. The flies, when the rain wasn't falling too hard, there were a few flies around, but now even for them it's going to be too hard. You'll find the flies are going to try and find a branch somewhere and hold on for dear life, and try and avoid being washed away in this heavy rain. So for the lions, other than the water falling on them, it's actually quite pleasant. They don't have to worry about any of the others. And you'll find even hyenas in rain like this are not going to be actively looking for any sort of food item. They're also going to be sheltering and trying to stay out of it. You can see the females are trying to find thickets to try get out of this heavy downpour, and in doing so they'll be teaching the cubs what to do. You can see a little cub is now going in there as well, and I think that little cub has just stolen its mother's place. So it's decided, well, you can lead me to it, but I'm going to take the best spot, and it's wormed its way right into the thickest part of that bush, as little cubs can do. Look at that look. Isn't that a look of unhappiness? Amazing. I really like this Nkuhuma pride. They are absolutely beautiful lions. They're huge and are always in good condition. But look at that. That is as deep into a bush as you could possibly get yourself. She's kind of tucked her head in right under that, and is all likelihood not getting rained on nearly as much as if she was out in the open. So for her, she's very happy. And you can see they're actually facing away, so they've all got their backs to the rain at the moment. The rain is coming from our eastern side, and they're all facing west now, and so that means that they don't have to get rain falling in their eyes. Unfortunately for them, they don't have a lovely roof like we do, and I'm quite glad they haven't decided to come join us here, because that would be quite something. And there are the gluttonous ones, so those are the ones that are still too hungry to get out of the rain. So the lack of vultures is also the reason why it's still lying right out in the open. Had this been a very sunny, hot morning, you would have found that the lions would have tried to have dragged it under a tree somewhere to try get it out of the way, and one is out of the sun and the other is to try get it out of the way of the vultures so that they can't see it. But luckily for us, it's raining, so they've just left it right out in the open. Now, I don't know if you guys can see, it's quite difficult, but as this rain has started, there are a number of insects starting to fly. So a whole bunch of termites have just started coming out, and there's clouds of them coming up off the ground at the moment. You can see in amongst the rain, every now and then VM will get one or two of them in shot, and they're flying around there. And so with this rain, they know that the soil is softening, and these winged allets are the reproductive members of the termite society, and so they know it's now the time to go and start new colonies. So fly into the rain, meet up with a potential mate, and then they can start the excavating to get a new mound developed. And that's why we saw all those European rollers earlier, is this is what they're feeding on as they're hatching with the rain. So these allets are coming out. It seems like the rain is just slowing down a little bit, which is nice. It's brightened up quite a bit now. But look at that tummy. These guys have obviously had a meal at some stage before this. This is not only from now. Those tummies cannot be bulging so quickly. So they definitely had something to eat fairly recently. I haven't heard any updates, but at the moment, the way things are, you often find that these lions will be killing impalas and those smaller antelope, and they don't leave any sign of it. So during the night they kill one and they all feed off it, and the next morning they've moved off and there's no visible sign that they've had a carcass. So I'm sure that's what they had. Well, Vanessa, these lions are going to have a really good meal here. This is a big waterbuck, and so they're definitely not going to finish it today. I would imagine by tomorrow morning it will be finished. So there's no real need for them to be hunting anytime soon. It's not to say that they won't. Should something come past, let's say they're sitting here and an old doddery buffalo bull comes past, they definitely will take that opportunity and hunt that buffalo bull and pull it down. So they are very opportunistic cats. But in all likelihood, they will probably feed off this, rest in this area for the next sort of 2 days, I would imagine. They won't move too far from here, and they'll digest this food over the next 2 days, and then they'll carry on. And when they start moving, then they'll look out for prey items. So I would say probably 2 to 3 days' time, they'll start looking for hunting. Now, I see one of the females is just repositioning herself. The rain is eased off a bit, so maybe she's going to come in. See how much water has just came off her. So with that shake, lots of water coming off her. Cats are not real fans of the weather like this. They don't like being wet, so you can imagine they are quite uncomfortable at this stage. But let's see, maybe she's going to come feed again now that the rain has slowed down. From the sun, you're going to end up with a lot of growth, and it's going to become bright green after this, and we're going to again end up with the grass being probably as long as it is on Cheetah Plains. The grass in Cheetah Plains is incredible. It's probably double the length of what the grass is here. Now, had they killed this waterbuck in some parts of Cheetah Plains, we probably wouldn't even be able to see the lions if they lay down, and these little cubs definitely would disappear. There was an area that we were in the other day, and I was walking around just having a look, and the grass was way over my hip high, in some places almost as much as my chest. So those little cubs would disappear in that. So thankfully they've killed it in quite an open area, and we've been able to get ourselves into a good position to see what's going on. So Potato, you're wondering whether there's enough tree cover for the lions to find some sort of shelter in this deluge that we're having. Well, I'm just looking around. Sorry, I don't have much of a field of view because of our little Flintstone mobile, but there are quite a number of densely foliated bush willows around us, so in all likelihood they will be able to find something. Now the rain has really eased off quite a bit, and you'll find they'll come out, because being under a tree after a bit of rain like this is all these big drops that are going to fall on them, so it's better to actually come out and be in the soft drizzle or lack of drizzle, depending on what's going on. Like now it's kind of calmed down, there doesn't look like there's too much rain at the moment, so I would imagine it's much more comfortable to be right out in the open than it is to be under those trees with big drops falling on them. But there is enough cover for all of them. There's quite a few bush willows to my right here. There's a big fallen over tree, and one of the lionesses has gone into there, and so I'd imagine that's where the rest of them will eventually start going. So you can see in there, and Liam's showing me very carefully the big drops of water that come down off these bush willows. So when the rain subsides, you find they all come out of that. And I wouldn't be surprised at what we'll find. The road is really close. They just off the road. When we were following them, you could see they kind of just came in here, and the carcass is not too far off the road. And so I would imagine, if the rain subsides, that most of them will actually go lie on the road. The road will be the driest section. They won't have wet grass, and it'll be much more comfortable for them there. But these little ones are loving this. They are tucking in. It's not too hot. I'm sure they've had a very, very warm last 3 weeks. And so they'll be probably enjoying this little bit of cooler weather. And any time they've got meat from mom, it's always good for them. So they'll be quite happy. I'm sure these three that have stayed behind are also quite impressed with the rain, and that it reduced the amount of competition at the carcass. So all the others scattered for safety, and these three braved it out, and they've gotten themselves the opportunity to feed where they like. So they don't have to compete for the best parts. They can just find an area that they want to eat, and off they go. Now let's see if this one is going to climb over the top of the carcass. Seems like that's what's going to happen. Oh, there we go. And look at the paws. So with the rain, a lot of that blood would have washed out onto the ground and would have made a whole bunch of mess at the feet of those lions. So you can see its paws are covered in blood. It looks a bit gory, doesn't it? Little one, you're going to have to get a good grooming from your mother. Sorry, I know you're trying to ask me something about lion cubs growing up, but we've got a lot of static with the rain. It's quite difficult to hear. So I don't know, Chris, if you can send that through one more time. Sorry. So lion cubs versus leopard cubs in terms of growing up, I'm not quite sure in terms of, do they grow faster or slower, or if it's success rate of cubs. Guillaume, can you hear what Kirsty's saying?
Lion cubs grow slower than leopard cubs.
So lion cubs grow slower than leopard cubs. There we go. We finally got it deciphered. Sorry, the static is quite bad with the moisture in my earpiece. It's difficult to hear what's going on. Lion cubs, no, they grow about the same rate as a leopard cub would. It's obviously dependent on nutrients, so the more nutrients these guys can get, the quicker they're going to grow, and the bulkier they're going to be. But if you have a look at these lion cubs, most of these are females. So much like Shongile, they're not going to be quite as big as if there was males amongst them. And so you'll find that the lion cubs grow at pretty much the same rate. Ultimately, the lions are going to be much bigger than the leopards. So if you had to take an 8-month-old leopard and an 8-month-old lion, you'd find that they would be a big size difference between the two of them. The lion would be already quite a lot bigger than what the leopard is. So they do grow a little bit faster. Now, it's difficult to show you a size comparison between a lion and a leopard cub because it's very seldom that you will ever see the two of them together. They both will avoid each other as much as possible. But these lion cubs that you see here, they are now just shy of 8 months, and they are probably the size of Shongile already. They're really probably a little bit taller. They might not be as heavy as her, well, in fact, actually, I would imagine they are heavier. So they are probably Shongile's size already, and she's now over a year old. So if you had to take another 4 months, these lions would be much bigger than Shongile would be at the same stage. And you can still see a little bit of the effects of the mange. There's still a little bit of grey going on there, but it has healed up a lot better, and they're not itching. I've been watching to see if any of them are scratching, and none of them are scratching, so I would imagine that mite is all but gone now, which is great news. Alright, so we are going to stick around here a little bit longer and see what goes on and see the shenanigans of these little cubs, and while we do that, we'll see what shenanigans Jamie and Brent are getting up to in the tent.
Well, Jamie has joined us in the tent now, so
Hi.
The rain keeps coming. So even though that you get gaps where you are able to drive, unless you're in a nice static sighting like Tristan, and we might wet some of the stuff that would not be good, like batteries and cameras.
I tried to find a static sighting, and all I ended up doing, I think, was making ruts in the road. So I decided to retreat. A little bit damp.
Oh, it is quite damp. Even I'm a bit damp. Just my shoulder got wet.
No.
Just when I was closing the zip, the one came off and it made me. And I'm cold now.
Are you a little wet?
Just this patch on my shoulder here is wet.
Oh, shame.
I know it's very tough in the tent.
I'm sure it is.
I think you're a bit more wet.
I think I might be. I'm scared to take the jacket off. Just keep it on in case.
Yeah, well, isn't it wonderful? The Nkuhumas are back.
I know, finally.
Yes,
So
but
happy.
the
Been missing them.
the two females that we saw hunting night before last are still missing. So Amber Eyes and the youngest lioness.
Oh, all the cubs there.
All 6 cubs, yeah?
Yay! Wonderful news. Looking enormous and scraggly.
Yes, they're very fat.
Gangly.
I think they ate something else last night before this water bug. Yes, no, we have some puddles. Let's go. Let me just go remove the puddle. This is quite useful.
There you go. That's all yours.
Well, so it was quite funny. So we've got a big tarpaulin in camp, and us tall people, we walk and we push the water off. Well, Kirsten is about this big. Oh, smaller. Brian says smaller. Okay. Well, Kirsten is quite happy because she's no longer the shortest person in camp. So the baby of the camp and the now shortest person in the camp is our new lady in FC. Her name is Megan. Maybe we should get Megan to come introduce herself at the tent, Kirsten. What do you think? Okay, so. Well, she's busy she can take 2 minutes from working to come introduce herself to everyone. Now, so Kirsten has to use sticks. Yesterday she used a chair to put the water off. When Brian and I just do this. Yeah, so shame. I think maybe.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, maybe Kirsten. Yes. See, this wouldn't be her leg. This would probably be her whole spine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kirsty's highly amused in Final Control. She's thoroughly entertained.
I think she's very happy she's no longer the shortest person in camp anymore. Shame, Megan, you're now the shortest person in camp and the youngest person in camp.
There's nothing wrong with being short.
But you're not short. Kirsten,
No, Kirsten not.
Kirsten is still convinced that her and Jamie are the same height. They are not. I was measuring fridge seals in the DRC because we need to replace one of the seals in the fridge, and I happen to have a tape measure. So I get bored quite easily, so when I have things to play with. So I basically wandered around with the tape measure measuring people in camp. So Jamie was 170.
No, don't exaggerate. Not quite.
No, it was
165.
No, it was bigger than that. Well, maybe my measuring skills. But Kirsten was a whopping 154, and Megan was 151. She's nearly a midget. Nearly. Megan, you're very lucky you're not a midget. But now, we had a look at that quartz crystal that Brian had. Now, I've found some more quartz, and we've popped it under the microscope. So there we go. So this is just from the sand. I need a, there we go, that'll do. No, that's a bit short. Well, let's just try and move it around a bit. Oh, look, there's a little root inside the quartz as well. Tiny little brown thingy there is a piece of grass root. But you can see, so most of the sand and the roads around here are all this. There we go, that's a bit better. Quartz, but it's based off granite, so it's granite quartz. So we don't have really big pieces of it here. So it's been weathered and worn by rain like we've been having and wind and the ages to produce a very fine sort of sand, which is made up, if you look very closely, mostly of little bits of quartz that are broken up. So maybe that's why we have such good luck on game drives and stuff, because we're surrounded by quartz that sucks all the bad energy, Brian. Yes, so there we go. That's the quartz. Now, I have been looking for stuff to do in the tent. Now, of course, I don't want to copy James's things. We must find our own things. But I was hoping that a frog would hop past, because that would be a really interesting thing to look at under the microscope, but to have a look at their skin.
That would be all those glands that are in the pits of the skin.
Yeah, so who knows, maybe we will see an unvictorious bullfrog.
Yeah, no shame. Those poor frogs. Potato.
So
Potato would like to know, has there been enough rain to make the flowering trees and plants bloom once again? I think we're probably not going to see as many flowers as we did. We might see the emergence of some new ones that will pop up. And I think that we're just at still that little bit before the end of the growth season for a lot of the grasses. So I think that we're going to see a really nice green flush. It's the same thing that happened last year with the late rains. I think they actually came in March last year, that we had the rains that filled up is a strong word, slightly topped up Buffelshoek Dam before it went dry completely for the rest of the year. But I think there will be a little bit of blooming. The trees won't flower, I wouldn't have thought, not too much. No. I think we're past that point of our summer or of our wet season.
The only trees that really flowered this year were the scotias, the boerbeens, and some of the weeping wattles.
And the acacias.
And the acacias, yeah. But I mean, I haven't seen a gardenia flower since 2015. And that's really sad, because they're beautiful and smell absolutely stunning.
I saw one really sad-looking tree wisteria that was it was flowering, but the flowers were not looking in their best condition. They were a bit droopy. I mean, they're always a bit droopy, but more droopy than normal.
Now, we have been being quite lucky with Cheetah recently, and there's been quite a lot of people asking about king cheetahs and things like that. So I thought, while we're in the tent here, it's a good opportunity to have a little discussion about them. Have you ever seen a king cheetah?
No. I have in captivity.
I haven't even seen one in captivity. Now, interesting enough, so king cheetah it's a recessive gene that creates a very interesting coloration. Now, there is a skin of a king cheetah. So basically what happens is that they produce more melanin and the spots fuse. And one of the reasons that king cheetah aren't really seen in the wild is because there was such an an abnormally to be seen, that every time one was seen, that was nimbly darted and caught and taken somewhere else where people tried to breed more of them. So there is a strong possibility that a lot of that genetic material in the wild has been lost to captive.
That looks like a Rorschach.
Yes. Now, this is a very one. This is the last king cheetah that was taken from the wild. And there we go. And you can see it's still a young cub. Now, it has come from an area less than 20 kilometers from here.
Where did it come from?
So there's quite a large community called Ekonuk.
Oh, yes. I think I did know the story.
Which is outside the Sabi Sands here. And it used to be farmlands and cattle farms and that. And the last one was at 1972 or 73 was the last king cheetah taken. So there is a from this area, from Acornhook, so very close to this area. So there is a possibility that that recessive gene still exists in the wild population here. Now, the reason the Kruger and the Sabi, or this greater Kruger area, had more king cheetah than anywhere else, they have been recorded from Namibia, but far less so, is we must remember that this is the largest meta population of cheetah in Africa. So the largest population with the most diverse genetics, which is saying something for cheetah, because they are so genetically close. So you can take a piece of skin from a cheetah in Kruger and skin graft it onto a cheetah in East Africa. They're so genetically close that skin will take almost immediately.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is very
so they must only have one blood group.
Exactly.
Must be exactly the same.
Exactly the same. They haven't. I think even the Asiatic cheetah is still part of that same blood group. Now, of course, the cheetah will probably go extinct in the next 5,000 years or so, regardless of our efforts to save them. And they probably will survive longer because of human beings. And Namibia is a perfect case where the cheetah population has actually increased because of human beings, and in particular because of farmers. And what they do is they shot all the lions and hyenas, and cheetah aren't really a threat to livestock. So the cheetah populations on those big Namibian farms actually increased. It is one of those funny ones, those.
My best cheetah sighting ever was on foot in really basically a farming community. No lions on that reserve anymore. The leopards, if you saw them, were gone within 2 seconds. And we just happened to see 5 cheetah gathered together. It was such a weird mix. I assume that the female was coming back into estrus. It was 2 males, a female, and 2 subadult cubs, all combined together. Does that make 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, that's right. And they were hunting impala right outside the house, and they had absolutely no idea we were there, sitting crouched behind a tree, watching them go about hunting the impala at the same time. The female, it was a very weird sight. It was a weird combination of males and females and numbers in that particular group, because we had the males weren't actually showing all that much interest in the female. Perhaps I don't know, maybe she was just coming into estrus, so she wasn't quite ready to mate yet. But it was fascinating to watch the dynamics. Also, that same place is the only place, it's the only time I've ever been charged by a wild cheetah. I was very confused when it happened, because they get their straight legs and they go as they sort of hop forward, because of course they don't really growl at you. It is absolutely hilarious. We've got the genetic diversity of the king cheetah. Not genetic diversity, that's exactly the wrong way to phrase that. We have the anomaly of the king cheetah, and we have a question about whether or not, and sorry, Chris, I didn't quite hear the name, but we have a question about catastrophe. Catastrophe? That's an interesting username. Catastrophe? Catastrophically not, no. We have never seen any black leopards on these live drives. They do occur in South Africa. It's very rare. It's obviously a recessive gene that creates that excessive melanin, which then causes them to be black, like panthers. Yeah.
Well, a panther is a leopard.
I know.
Oh, no. I have seen one in my life. I was about 9 years old.
Really?
Yeah, in Zululand. On a place called Pinda, and I was going through to school in the morning.
It's very cool.
And it ran across the road, and it was seen twice more after that, and then never again. So, of course, an area that's quite famous for black leopards is Lydenburg, which is not too far from here. But there seems to be they're far more common in the Congo Basin rainforests. And that makes sense.
It makes total sense.
That a recessive gene like that would start coming into the fore in an area where there's not a lot of light.
Yeah.
So the darker you are in the bottom of a rainforest would be good to hide. Now, we've got two big cat skulls here, and we've got the lion and the leopard. Now, what I wanted to show you in particular is how elongated the skulls are. So nice and long, and they're almost not quite a dog-like muzzle, but they definitely have a elongated muzzle. And then we've been seeing quite a lot of cheetah. Unfortunately, we do not have a cheetah skull, but I have a cheetah picture of it, or a skull. So there we go. Now, if we have a look at that, we haven't tried there. Oh, there we go. So you can see it lacks that elongation, so much more rounded. It almost looks like the skull from the Alien. Was it Predator? Alien, Brian?
Yeah.
Which was that one? Was it
Alien? Actually.
And so the skull looks far more like an alien.
That's exactly what it looks like.
Alien skull than it was. No, so you can see quite different. And one of the biggest differences, and that's why cheetah are not very strong, and their jaws are not very strong. So if you have a look on both the lion, the leopard, and the hyena, you've got this carnassial crest where all the big muscles and tendons are joined to, and that's where they get a lot of the power from their bite. And the cheetahs is almost a non-entity. It's hardly even developed. So it's very fascinating.
It's completely different.
Yeah,
Marco, no is the answer to your question. There are no local communities that use cheetah for hunting anymore, or at least I don't think they've ever been used in South Africa.
In Southern Africa,
no.
No.
I know that VM, who has some interesting ideas every now and again, I know that VM has been very keen to either forge a friendship between cheetah and, his idea was cheetah and lions, or cheetah and wild dog, get them to cooperate together. I think the chances are relatively slim.
That would end in bloodshed.
It would end in blood. Well, yes, we do know this, but I think perhaps VM might have been setting reality aside for a while. But he did suggest that perhaps we could also get ourselves a cheetah. I'm not quite sure what we'd do with it, but no, they're done in this area.
Hello, Robin. Well, we'll get to your question in a second, Robin, which ties into the story. I'm going to say, Robin would like to know, do cheetah habituate to people on foot easier than other cats? The answer is actually yes, they do. But just to tie up the last one, so the only African literature I know about of people using cheetah to hunt were the Egyptians. And I've forgotten the name of, this is going to irritate me now. There was a large, in the Sahara, when it was still a wet Sahara, about 2,000-3,000 years ago. Carthage?
The city of Carthage.
The city of Carthage.
The siege of Carthage.
No, it's not Carthage.
It's not Carthage.
The same era, though. But there was a community that lived in the Sahara Desert that also used cheetah. Now, it is more common in Arabia. So Iran, areas like that, the desert tribes were said to have used cheetah for hunting. But in Africa, it's only, I know, there's that extinct city in the Sahara Desert where there's petrographs of them hunting cheetah, and of course the ancient Egyptians. So now we're wondering about cheetah habituating on foot. So I'm going to let Jamie answer that while I look for something.
The answer to that is yes, they do habituate far more easily to people on foot. They tend to be far more tolerant. Of course, there's the added advantage to that in that they're not going... There are very, very few cases of a wild cheetah attacking people in any situation. The only few people that I know of, there was either something slightly wrong with the cheetah, had become too confident. I know one story of a cheetah climbing into a Land Rover with the guide and grabbing him by the arm, and he just put his foot down and drove off. But generally, cheetah... Oh, the other one is Colin Patrick at Moholoholo in the reserve itself. He got charged by a cheetah, and he always walks with he's a tracking assessor and teacher and trainer. He actually trained me with my initial tracking. And he always walks around with what we call a knob kiri. And Brent knows about knob kiris. He's got one.
It's like my big stick.
His big stick. And he didn't quite know what to do with this charging cheetah, so he bopped it on the head with a knob kiri. And the cheetah turned around and walked away. Generally, though, that doesn't happen. They tend to habituate more easily. They actually tend to, if you were to choose to tame a wild cat, not that you ever should, not that we in any way condone that sort of thing, if you were to, a cheetah would be the easiest one to. They generally... they become tame, essentially, quite easily. Although never forget that a tame wild animal is never truly tame. But I mean, I've sat with wild cheetah 30 meters away, no, not 30 meters, 30 feet away, 10 meters away from where I've been sitting, and they've been perfectly relaxed. It's relatively easy to do. I know Brent spent many. I know. You tried to load the picture. Yes. I know which picture you're going for as well. So it does happen relatively easily. I found it easier with male cheetah than female cheetah, but I think that's just maybe because the numbers that I've worked with, they've been more obvious signs of the male cheetah. They've been easier to find than perhaps the females. They also have the regular territorial routes that they walk, which makes them easier to find, whereas with the females, they're basically nomadic, essentially. Their home range is so enormous that predicting where they're going to be at any one point in time is almost impossible.
And you always, if it's a healthy cheetah population, you're always going to have a higher male demographic. There's always going to be more males than females. So that's why we do see a lot more male cheetah. Now, where is this thing? I can't find it now. But I spent an unbelievable amount of time with cheetah on foot. I've been following 2 males, and I've watched them kill a baby wildebeest. I've watched them kill impala, all while following them on foot. So the reserve where my parents live, they're 2 completely wild male cheetah, and over the course of a couple of years, I mean, I can get to within, on foot, lying on my stomach. They occasionally hiss at me, but I can get less than 2 meters. So, I mean, there, literally where the edge of the tent is. So, I mean, you can almost lean out and touch them. Okay, I will find this picture now. Where is it gone?
They're also, I've found them to be relatively incurious. They might look at you the first time they see you. Sometimes they might take a few steps towards you, but after that, they completely ignore you. They could not be less bothered about your presence with them.
It is an incredible thing. Now, the only female cheetah I've seen on Djuma was on foot, and she took off like a bad smell. I mean, she was gone like a bullet and never to be seen again. That was quite a while ago, though. Okay, well, talking about cats, while I try figure out where I put that photograph, let's go see if the lions are continuing to munch on the waterbuck.
They are indeed, Brent. They are absolutely motoring their way through this waterbuck. I don't think this thing is even going to last the day at the rate that they're feeding. All of them have come out of the bush now. It stopped raining, so everybody is out and taking the chance while it's dry to do a bit of feeding. And so they've all come out and everybody's grabbed their own little piece and they're busy chewing away. Now they've finished all the intestines. The one female ate all of that. So Ellen, all the way from Canada, you're wondering whether the hair of these animals is going to be eaten as well. Well, yes, they will eat the hair. They typically don't like it, so often what you'll find is that they'll lick at the hair and try and kind of get rid of most of it. But during their consumption, particularly with hairy animals like waterbuck, they definitely are going to get a bit of hair down the gullet, and they will eat some of it. Like I say, you'll find them licking every now and then just to get rid of most of it, but there will be hair that they will. So most of the time you'll find that hair will just pass all the way through, and when they defecate next, their dung will actually be packed full of this waterbuck hair, or they're going to go and feed off some grass and get ill, and they'll then regurgitate all of that hair that they are not able to digest. So there will be some of it that will be consumed. Now, I'm sure when we first found them that there were 6 cubs, but I can only see 5 now. I can only count 5 cubs. So I don't know if maybe those of you that were with us when we found them, if all 6 were on the road. I'm sure I did count 6. I don't see any other sign of a cub anywhere, which is a bit concerning if there is only 5 of them. Maybe I just got too excited and counted 6, but I only see 5 now. Maybe the one is just lying down. I know one went off into the thicket to lie with the adults, and so maybe that's where one is now, and I just can't see it from where I am, but I only see 5. Kirsty's saying that we did see 6. I thought so. I thought I might be going a bit mad. I know I am mad as it is, but a bit more mad than normal. But isn't that an amazing picture? All of them now settled around the carcass. Absolutely beautiful. So, Chris, Yes, they'll chew on the smaller bones, so you'll find they'll crack through some of the ribs, they'll chew on some of the leg bones, but the big bones along the spine and even those sort of upper leg bone areas and the skull, unfortunately those bones are going to be too thick for them to go through. So what they don't normally do is they just lick them and they get as much of the meat they can off the bone, and then whatever they can't consume they just leave. And you'll find then hyenas will come in and they'll be able to deal with some of them, but the spine and upper leg bones are really very difficult for them to crunch through. So there will be some bones left after this, but all the smaller ones will be eaten, particularly those rib bones. They get crunched down. Lots of nutrients inside them, calcium, and then the marrow inside is also good. You can actually see that they've eaten a little bit of the edge of the ribs. It's difficult now because the one cub is in the way, but you can see they've started kind of crunching down on those bones a little bit. But look at that cub has got its head right inside that carcass. So you can see there's that female licking now. So she was just starting to pull bits off, and now she's chewing through that skin. So there will be hair on that she is going to consume, most definitely. And it seems like the rain is about to start again. I can hear the pitter-patter on our little Flintstone mobile. So I wonder if everybody's going to go run for cover like they did just now. Well, indeed, Kathy, the smell of this animal is been masked quite heavily by the rain. Normally when you get this close to a carcass, you can smell the stomach content. That's what normally smells the most. And there's not even a whiff of it at the moment. So the rain is probably diluting that scent a little bit. And so it really isn't smelling nearly as much as it would if it had been a hot day. Also, by tomorrow, this carcass, if it was very, very hot, would stink of rotten meat. Whereas with this overcast, rainy weather, this carcass will still be quite fresh tomorrow and won't have too much of a scent to it. So it is not too bad this morning, and the rain is helping with that, which is obviously good for the lions because it means things like hyenas are not going to be able to pick up the scent and find this. Where we are now, we're pretty much straight north of where Gwen, the hyena, has been denning, and so I've seen her tracks up and down close to where we are now, so she might stumble upon this tonight if she's doing a little patrol. Also, the way the lions are feeding, the way they crunch bone and growl at each other like we had earlier, that will give their position away. But in terms of scent, at the moment it's actually not too bad, and so I don't think too many things will be able to smell this carcass. Now I'm hoping for these lions that the Birmingham boys don't show up, because if one of the Birminghams come here, that will be the end of their meal. He'll probably in all likelihood take most of this and eat all of it, so they will lose what they have. So I'm hoping that they all get a really good feed, and then maybe by this evening one of the Birmingham boys rocks up so that we can get to see them. It'd be nice to see Mfumo again. We were talking about him earlier, and it'd be good just to see how his wounds are doing and whether he's healed up a little bit. So once these guys have had a good feed, then I don't mind the Birminghams rocking up. They have been quite alert. So earlier, when the rain stopped, all the females were watching and looking around. Now, it could be that there's some sort of animal moving around that I can't see, maybe something small like a duiker or a steenbok that ran through. But they were looking very, very, very interested in something. And so I was wondering if maybe the Birminghams were going to come in, or a hyena, and that would have made it very exciting had a hyena arrived here. I think Gwen on her own, unfortunately, would get a bit of a hiding from these three big lionesses. But with cubs involved, you never know. It can become quite chaotic when hyenas arrive. So that's maybe why they're so alert as to what's going on. These lions are very clever. They know that in the last few weeks the hyenas would have come back into this area. They would have heard the hyenas calling at night, and so they'll know that the hyenas are here a lot more than what they were a few months ago, and that's probably why they're so wary of what's going on. It was interesting when we were following them here, or when we first got to them, they were all trotting down the road, and I was wondering if maybe somebody had been messing around a little bit and that the cubs had become a little bit unrelaxed. Sometimes if they spend a lot of time in areas where there's not too many people driving around, so particularly the southern Manyeleti, there's really not too many cars down there, and so they don't see vehicles much, and I was wondering if they'd become a little bit nervous of the cars. But we can see now why they were trotting, is because I'm sure these cubs could smell meat on their mother, and so they knew that there was food on the way, and that's why they were running down the road to try and see where this food is. It looks like this one at the back here has almost become so full that it can't actually feed anymore, and it's dropped its head on the carcass and just kind of slowly chewing away. It's about as lazy as it gets. Look at that. So cute. So, Tiffany, that's an interesting question. You're asking whether these lions would end up going to a pan to drink, or prefer to go to a pan to drink, or if they would just lick the leaves that are around here, or the liquid that's come out of this carcass, so the blood and the stomach content. And funnily enough, when we were off air and we were with Brent in the tent, one of the females actually came and she did lick start drinking out of the cavity of this animal. So with that downpour of rain, it obviously captured some moisture and some water in the cavity, and so she sat there licking all that blood and water up. So they'll get most of their moisture from this carcass. They won't have to worry about going to a pan, and then whatever they haven't got, they'll just get off the grass and the leaves around them. I don't think they're going to go to a pan just to drink when it's wet like this. Once the carcass is done, different story. You might find they're going to move off, go and groom themselves, and then go and have a nice long drink at a pan where there's lots of water. Especially if the sun does eventually come out, then they'll be driven to go to more permanent water sources. Luckily for them, Buffelshoek Dam is not even, I would say, about 200 meters down the road, so it's very close. So when they're done here, I'm pretty sure that's where they're going to head to. But it seems these girls have had quite a few battles recently, lots of scars all over them. You can see that female's got a bit of a bite on her right shoulder. There's another female that's got 2 big cuts on her right leg. So they've all got a few scars on them. I wonder if they haven't been battling with some other lions, or maybe with the Birminghams. While they've still had the cubs, the Birminghams have been around too much and there's been the odd altercation. I know they had a few run-ins with them. So now look at her trying to get in between the ribs there. Isn't that amazing? You can see she's almost separating that skin from the ribs itself. Right, Amber, well, the male cubs will be pushed out probably when they reach sexual maturity, which is generally around 3.5 years old. It will depend on the dominant males that we have. They've all just stopped and stared down the road now. I wonder if something's not approaching here. From where we're sitting, it's really quite difficult to see what's going on. But look at how they've picked up visual cues from one another. So the one female stopped, and both the other adult females immediately popped up their heads to look in that same direction to see, is there something that they need to confront? Because they know as a united force, they're going to be able to look after the cubs much better than just one female on her own. But amazing to see how they watch one another. So now that they've seen there's nothing, the other two have gone back to feed, and looks like everything has gone back to normal. So sorry, Amber. The male cubs will be kicked out around, like I say, 3.5 to 4 years old. It does depend on the males that are dominant at the time. You'll find that the fathers of them often are a little bit more tolerable and allow them to stay till about 4, whereas if you get a new coalition coming in and they take over, then often they'll chase those males out long before that, and sometimes you'll find these males going off at 3 already. So it just depends, and then they will live that nomadic life for a few years until they can find a territory of their own. Now it's going to be interesting what's going to happen, talking about male lions and coalitions. Now that the Majingalans are down to 3, it's going to be an interesting situation that's going to happen with the Birminghams and them and the Matimbas. I haven't heard any updates on the Matimbas either. The last I heard, they went into the Manyaleti, so they're not even in the Sabi Sands anymore at the moment. And now, like I say, with the 3 Majingalans, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. There's definitely room now for a young coalition to come in, especially that central and western area. And I wonder if the Birminghams are not going to start pushing further west now and just going to go and explore and see what they can find. They now have the numerical advantage over the Majingalans. They've now got 4 against 3, so it will be interesting to see what happens. Although the other day, 2 of the Majingalans did chase one of the Birminghams, so maybe they're still a little bit nervous of them. Alright, so while we're busy watch these guys devour their waterbuck and go through this carcass at a rate of knots, let's go back to Brent in the tent and see what he's up to.
I'm alone in the tent again, and as you can see, there's those lion's teeth. Those ones obviously not gnashing on a carcass at the moment. Jamie and Dave were about to try go out again, and it started raining again. So they're just trying to dry out their vehicle. So I found the picture I was looking for with my, oh, no, not that one, with the Cheetah brothers on my parents' reserve. So that's me with my camera there. And this is actually quite early on, and now these days I could probably sit about there, so much closer to them. So probably they're about 4 meters away from them. So here we go. Oof. Now, there's an interesting question from Fuzzman Sparkles. How many different animal species, oh, excuse me, have I seen cheetah hunt? Oh, let me think quickly for a second. Let me have a sip of water. Lovely. Okay, we'll start with the impala. Okay, impala, baby zebra, kudu, wildebeest, duiker, steenbok, scrub hare, African wildcat, bat-eared fox, some of the more stranger ones up in Botswana, Thompson's gazelle, okay, we got 10, Grant's gazelle, topi, I must be missing some, Inyala, I've never seen them hunt a bushbuck though, Inyala, I've never seen them hunt waterbuck. What animals am I missing? Elephant, no. Buffalo, no.
Wildebeest?
I've said wildebeest. Dik. Here we go. I'm just trying to think. I've seen them. What else have I seen them chase? Now, just while I'm trying to rack my brain. Ostrich. Yes, I've seen them catch ostrich before. Well done, Brian. I said African wildcats, and everyone was, what? Actually, I've seen them chase. They weren't hunting it, but I've seen them chase an aardwolf as well. But that African wildcat's actually quite a funny story. So we're on an area called White Plains in northern Botswana, a very beautiful area, and we had a coalition of 2 males that we used to see regularly around that area. And what we quite often do, especially with cheetah, and that is, they're crepuscular hunters, as you know. So we'd found them when it was quite hot and they weren't moving, they were just sleeping. So, and we'd just had a fire. I think it was June, July, somewhere on that. So there'd been a big fire, so there was this blackened, scorched earth around us. And we were parked about 500 meters away from them and stopped to have a little G&T, a little sundowner stop. And while we were there, all of a sudden, we stopped so we could see the cheetah in case they got up and started moving. The cheetah got up and started chasing a puff. So you can imagine the burnt ground, all that dust, this little puff running in front of them at high speed and making the most ridiculous right angle turns, etc., etc. So we quickly got everyone back in the car and we're getting ready to go there, and then that puff started coming straight towards us, and then the puff went under the car at the front right tire, and the cheetah stopped right next to the car like this, and then the front right tire started going, and it was an African wildcat who had taken refuge in the wheel arch of the car. So the cheetah got bored quite quickly and moved off. But to get that wildcat out of there was quite a challenge. Even if we started the car, tried to move it forward, the cat wouldn't get in there. I got a stick trying to get the cat out and would not get out. Eventually, it decided the cheetah were along and it took off and disappeared. So strange things can happen in the bush from time to time. But yes, there we go. That's probably one of the stranger cheetah chases I've ever seen. Lechwe. Sorry, another one came back to me. It's only on now 14 or 15 species. I think that's about it. Okay, so we've been chatting about genetic variations and particularly recessive genes and different color variations. And Vanessa is wondering, it's quite nice. Vanessa is wondering, are white lions quite rare to see? Yes, they are. It's another sort of recessive gene. It's a form of leucism. So when you have a black leopard, it is called melanism, so it's a overstimulation of melanin by the animal. Leucism is a lack of melanin in the hair or feathers. So it is not albinism. Albinism is albino, which means that there's a lack of melanin completely. So the skin of those animals is pink, whereas white lions are leucistic. So there's a lack of melanin in the hair follicles. So they are quite rare. They do occur not too far from here in the Timbavati Reserve, and there's also some in the Kruger. I'm not sure if the Kruger ones are still alive. What happens is that the females are generally the only ones that survive, and they also still have a very low survival rate. Males, if you're big and white and stick out and you get kicked out of your pride, it's going to be really hard to survive. So the females have a much better survival rates as they're living within the pride structure. So there are a couple of prides. I think it's called the giraffe pride and the Ross pride in Klaseri Timbavati that currently have white lions there, and then Singita was the mountain pride that had in the Kruger that had white lions. So there is a possibility that their genetics might reach here. There's no fences between those populations and us, but it would have to mean that the male mating with one of our Nkuhuma females is carrying that recessive gene, as well as the Nkuhuma females carrying that recessive gene. It is a possibility. It's highly unlikely though. Now, there are some. Let's think about how to put this now. So obviously, white lions seem to be quite sought after in the captive trade and that. So it is actually, you find a lot of the white lions in zoos and things like that are quite small and not nearly as big as their wild counterparts. Now, this is a very big problem with people, in my opinion, is that we see an abnormation, which it is, and we decide it is better than the norm. And the reason that they are abnormal and not normal is because obviously it doesn't work so well in the long run of survival. So people then will take and try to look for those genetic recessives. And same with the cheetah, why we probably don't have too many of them out here there's no king cheetahs I'm currently aware of out in the wild. And so people will take that recessive gene, will take a white female, and they just keep breeding them together. And it actually causes major problems with those animals because they are very often inbred and heavily inbred as well, because people like a specific color variation of an animal. Now, that is a great example of that is in the domestic dogs, but we'll chat about that a little bit later. Tiffany says, are there any menelistic lions or black lions? There's never been a black lion recorded. They don't have, probably you find that they've never had enough melanin, so you will find black animals generally in the spotted cats. So the closest I've seen to a black cheetah is, of course, that king cheetah type variation. So in leopards, serval, quite common melanistic, and strange enough, I've even seen a melanistic honey badger, a black honey badger in the Gabonese rainforest, and they're not that uncommon. We used to catch them on our camera traps quite often. So very, very interesting. Now, domestic dogs. So I was chatting about that whole humans breeding thing. So any dog, a Chihuahua can mate with a Great Dane. They are the same species. They are the same Canis species, and it's people choosing different traits and then breeding those traits together that has caused that massive variation that we have in domestic dogs. And that's why you often find, especially now, because we've been doing it for a few thousand years, with purebreds and certain species in particular, Rottweilers, Alsatians, they live quite short lives, and they're often, even at the young age of 6-7 years old, will start having hip failure and that is from human beings purposely choosing character traits in animals to breed. Now, of course, this has been done by human beings for a very long time, and in most domestic animals, if you look at horses and cows, sheep, goats, I mean, choosing the best meat producing or milk producing, and we've sort of almost forced them to mate together. Now, the reason it probably isn't as obvious in things like horses and cows is because they serve practical purposes, whereas that inbreeding of dogs is purely from an aesthetic point of view. So not a very good thing. So that's why it's a very, very difficult one. You got to be very careful where you get your hounds from. Now, speaking of creatures that inbreed, now if given the chance, lions will mate, a male lion will mate with his mom or his sister. Fortunately, that hasn't happened just yet with us, but let's go have a look at I've completely muddled my words. Let's go back to the Nkuhumas before I make more of a fool of myself.
So we've left the Nkuhumas. We decided that we're going to take a break in the weather and try and get back closer towards camp before another big bout of rain comes and we have to get absolutely soaking wet. As soon as we start driving in that rain, it becomes a bit of a problem. So that's why we decided to leave them. They were still busy eating. In fact, one female had gotten up and she went off and lay under a bush and was starting to groom. So I think they're starting to have their fill now, and in all likelihood are going to go and have a good rest. And hopefully it will be nice and dry for them, that they get a good sleep that's not too interrupted. It was very funny watching them in that heavy rain. They looked thoroughly unimpressed with life. But what an incredible sighting. I'm so glad that we had them and that they're going to be here at least for this afternoon. I highly doubt they're going to go anywhere by this afternoon. There's still quite a bit of meat on there, so in all likelihood they will be here and should still be around tomorrow morning, which is great. It will be good to have the Nkuhumas around for a bit. I know James and Taylor have not seen lions for weeks, so I'm sure they'll be pretty happy and will be itching to go and have a look. And it's good to see that everybody looks healthy and fat and full and nobody's in too bad a condition. So just coming along the Buffelshoek boundary now, just checking just to see maybe, just maybe, there's one of the Birmingham boys on the track of the Nkuhumas and just following in behind, but I haven't seen any sign of them. It looks all pretty clear at this stage. What was quite interesting is when we went out on the road and we went back the same way we came in with the Nkuhumas and kind of followed them in there, and there was not one single track after that rain. So the rain had washed away every little trace of those lions coming down that road, and in some places when we were following them, their tracks were really quite deep in the mud and it looked like those tracks would be there for a few days, but that rain came down and it washed everything away. So it just shows you how difficult it can be. You've almost got like a half an hour period that you've got to get past, or got to find those animals before the next bout of rain comes, otherwise you lose them. And if those Nkuhumas had gone deep into the block or deep into that bush area, it would have been really very tough to have tracked them down, because you wouldn't have seen those tracks very easily had they all gone in early last night and they had sat on that carcass. Then it would have been a big problem. We wouldn't have seen much at all. So it just shows you how it's all about luck and timing at the end of the day. And you can see a bit of erosion that's taken place with those bouts of rain. So some of the roads unfortunately are going to have a few eroded sections which will need to be repaired, but it's okay. So rather that than no rain at all. Now I wonder how Sydney's dam is looking in terms of water. Hopefully it will be looking quite good. It's just coming up ahead on the right hand side. So we'll just have a quick look there, see if there's any sign of anything. So I believe Brent says you can hear alarm calls near Vuatela. So I wonder if it's not worth just quickly checking. I just want to quickly check Sydney's dam and then we'll make our way that way and see if we can see anything. It doesn't look like anything at Sydney's dam, but I will turn a little bit just so you can all see how much fuller it is than even yesterday when Taylor was here with the fish eagle. So yesterday there was still quite a bit of mud, but now all that mud has been covered and the dam is quite full. So very, very nice. But now that there's nothing really there, I think let's quickly go back towards Vuatela and see. Maybe we can get lucky and close out with a leopard. So, Cindy, you're wondering if we're more worried about mosquitoes after this weather. Sorry, Sydney, I'm just sticking my head out of the car because otherwise I can't see where I'm going. It's unfortunately with the Flintstone Mobile, there's no side mirrors, and so very difficult to see. But yes, we will have quite a lot more mosquitoes now after this rain. It's going to be a mosquito-filled haven. Lots of stagnant water will be around, and so perfect breeding ground for mosquitoes, and so we should get quite a lot. It's not to say that we haven't had a lot. I've never seen so many mosquitoes in the camp that we stay in. If you go into the rooms at night, sometimes it's like clouds of mosquitoes that come out. So after this, I'm sure it's going to be insufferable, but it's okay, we'll survive. There's nothing like a bit of insect repellent just to keep them away. Alright, so we're just quickly gonna try see if we can get towards where Brent heard these monkeys alarm calling. I'm sure it must be for Karula or one of the cubs. It might be worth watching the dam cam and just keeping an eye out there and just seeing if there's any sign of... unfortunately the dam cam is down. Sorry about that. Kirsty's just reminded me, I forget with all this weather that sometimes these things happen. So unfortunately there won't be dam cam, but we'll go and have a little quick look and keep everybody updated. Oh, hello girl. Little female impala. There's quite a few of them actually. And unfortunately I'm in the way, the car is in the way, so we're going to carry on. It's the problem when we've got these covers on is it becomes a little bit more restricted. Everything's got to be kind of in front of us in our field of view, otherwise we battle a little bit. Alright, so while we make our way quickly back to Vuyatela, let's go back to Brent and see what he's getting up to in his warm, dry tent.
Well, I'm outside, and I'm still warm and dry, but there are monkeys alarm calling. It's so frustrating. I just want to run across to go see if Karula's there. Hopefully Tristan will be able to see. So they're alarm calling towards... they're alarm calling from Yuri's house, but I think they're looking towards Inga's, or maybe the dam cam. So guys, keep an eye out on the dam cam, because, who knows, maybe the Queen will be there. Oh, I apologize. The dam cam is not working. We are having trouble. The rain has caused trouble with the connection to the top of the mountain that runs the dam cam. I'm sorry, guys. But hopefully it'll be on soon. Alex and Connor and Anwar are on it. Now, hasn't it been quite a wonderful drive? I don't know. Brian, it's been quite nice in the tent. Yes. So as soon as the weather got really bad, we just ran inside and went, ha, 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 ha. But great to have the Nkuhumas back. Very exciting. I wonder where the two missing lionesses are. Are they with the Birminghams? I think they might be still looking for the rest of the pride. The one thing, it'll make it quite difficult for them with this rain, unless they start calling, because they're not going to be able to pick up the scent of the other prides. What do you see, Brian? Yes, the monkey's going... and they're getting more agitated, so whatever they've seen is coming closer to them. Fingers crossed, Karula on the sunset safari. That would be wonderful. It's so frustrating. But anyway, I suppose since I started seated, I'm going to keep... I'm going to sit down. Oh, I've got... See, you can see I have to hunch. Otherwise, everything in the tent will hit me in the face. Oh, there we go, hit my hat. Now, apparently the Nest Cam is working, so you do have a visual. So maybe you can have a low visual of Queen Karula. Or it could even be those two missing Nkuhuma girls as they search for the rest of their pride. Now, it's going to be interesting because those Matimbas up here, they might not be vocalizing because there's, or not unknown, but males that could pose a threat to those cubs. Those three lionesses are going to keep very quiet. But we're going to have to wait to see what happens on the sunset safari. Hopefully we will have lions, leopards, elephants, buffaloes, and all the other wonderful creatures. And as it gets a bit darker, I'm planning to do a little bit of frogging. I do love my frogs. And of course, I think who's going to be on this afternoon? I think Taylor will be joining, so it'll be lots and lots of fun. And so stick with us, and we will see you on the sunset safari for a damp, spectacular game drive. From Brian and myself, adieu.